Ang alagang Pilipino ay alagang may husay at malasakit. Alagang nagbabayanihan. Nakikiisa ang UNILAB sa mga nag-aalaga para sa kalusugan ng bayan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in the latest episode of INQlusive, the Inquirer webinar series in partnership with UNILAB, produced by the Philippine Daily Inquirer, Inquirer 2BU, and Inquirer.net. I'm Pam Pastor, Inquirer Super and 2BU editor, and I'm co-moderating this session with Roel De Vera, also with the Inquirer and former program coordinator for the Ateneo's Blended Learning Masters in Journalism program.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Learning in Focus. Are we ready for an online semester? This evening, we'll be talking about the challenges, the changes, the concerns involving in taking learning from the classroom to the internet.
We have speakers from different institutions who will be presenting their perspectives on this hot topic. Ultimately, the big question we're asking is, how ready are our schools, teachers, students, and yes, parents for online learning? Let's find out.
Allow me to first introduce our first speaker. He is the Undersecretary and Chief of Staff of the Secretary at the Department of Education. He provides overall supervision to a number of priority programs of the Office of the Secretary, including the NEAP, or the National Educators Academy of the Philippines, Transformation, Sulong Edukalidad, and now the Learning Continuity Plan in the time of COVID-19. He represents the department in various interagency processes, such as the Cabinet Assistance System. He also represents the DepEd in the SDG 2030 Global Steering Committee. He obtained his BS Economics and Bachelor of Laws from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. It is all welcome Undersecretary Nepo Malaluan. Good afternoon, USEC.
Yes, good afternoon to you, Ruel and Pam, and to all those that are monitoring this afternoon's discussion.
Yusek, would you like to start the discussion with your thoughts on online learning and the challenges that your institution has been facing?
Well, yes. I would like to start first with a clarification that when we talk about the learning continuity in this time of COVID and doing distance learning, online learning is only one of the modalities. I think our viewers and our parents and learners and the public and sometimes even policymakers equate distance learning with the online learning platform. And if we equate it with online learning with distance learning, then obviously we will not ever be ready at this present time for online learning if this is going to be the universal distance learning delivery method. So just to clarify that the Department of Education is preparing for various distance learning modalities that includes printed modules and even educational TV and radio-based instruction. Now, but certainly for those where there is connectivity and there is access to gadgets on the part of the learners and the households, then online learning is a very potent tool for distance learning. I heard that Ruel is part of an online learning program, and you can. I'm sure that he can attest that that it is very viable learning delivery modality. For one, it allows interaction, both synchronous interaction and a communication tool. A lot of creativity tools and productivity tools through the online platform. It allows for self-learning, to take the discipline of self-learning and so on. But what are the challenges? Well, of course, the key challenges is the technology itself, the availability of the technology. And in the Philippines, there is part of that is infrastructure related, and on the other hand, it's a resource relation. There's a related resource on the part of our learners and households. Then, of course, if we are, this is the first time that we will be doing it in a very large scale, and the capacity of our teachers also to deliver online learning is also a big challenge. Of course, there's also the conversion of existing learning resources that are intended mainly for classroom-based instruction, and converting them to distance learning learning resources. And so that is another big problem. So you can imagine how much is being done to be able to prepare the department for online learning delivery in such a quick pace. And it is something that we are doing 24/7. Actually, we're preparing all the self-learning modules, and it will be delivered in multiple platforms, as I mentioned, including online learning. To be able to see where our learners are with respect to connectivity and availability of the gadgets at home, our enrollment process now has included a survey of the capacity of the learner and the households to deal with online learning. So we will know, we have the initial processed information, and we will know how much in the next few days, how much is the extent of the learners that will be ready for online learning delivery. The other, of course, and as a final note on the challenge, is the cost of it on the part of the learner themselves, because as you know, going through online is not free on the part of learners themselves. I would stop there and uh, allow the discussions to I mean, for the issues to be raised so that we can respond to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Yusek. Now, our second speaker is currently the Dean of the College of Information Technology and Engineering at De La Salle Lipa. He holds a master's degree in applied physics from Harvard University and a Bachelor of Science degree in physics from California State University. Before pursuing studies in the United States, he attended the Christian Brothers La Salle schools in the Philippines. In the US, he spent over 15 years working for General Electric's Medical Systems Division and Aircraft Engine Division, doing super cool things like designing and manufacturing CAT scanners, superconducting magnets for MRI systems, and doing ultrasonic testing of jet engine components. He returned to the Philippines in the mid-90s, working in the textbook publishing industry, first at Phoenix Publishing House, then at DIWA Learning Systems. For 8 years, he was also a weekly contributor to Inquirer's lifestyle and opinion sections. Let's all welcome Dean George Bocobo. Good afternoon, sir. Okay, hang on. We're having technical difficulties. Should we proceed with the next speaker first? We'll go back to Dean Bocobo.
All right. Our third speaker has been in the field of instructional technology for 2 decades in various capacities and appointments. She is a certified e-learning specialist through a scholarship granted by the federal government of Germany and Global Campus 21 E-Academy, and a digital literacy alumna of the Distinguished Australian Fellowship Awards 2015 from Queensland University of Technology, or QUT. She is currently the director of the Educational Technology Center at the University of Santo Tomas, the UST, supervising the UST Cloud Campus Project, where she specializes in massive e-learning management for the oldest university in Asia, with an average online deployment of 46,000 students per academic term. As an e-learning leader, she ensures the professional development of the teaching workforce in the appropriate uses of technology across the wide spectrum of online remote delivery modes. She has worked with UNESCO ICT for Education in Bangkok and among Philippine teacher educational institutions such as Research and Distribution Training Center, RDTC, TC Coordinator in the promotion of the use of open and free educational resources, or OERs. She is the president and member of the Board of Trustees of the Philippine E-Learning Society, spearheading an exemplary league of e-learning professionals in the advancement of online technology in the country. Please welcome Assistant Professor Ana Cheryl Ramos. Good afternoon, Professor.
A pleasant good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
To our co-panelists and organizers, I'm equally excited for the opportunity to engage with you today.
Professor, would you, as somebody who's an expert on e-learning, I feel like we have so much to learn from you. Would you like to start the discussion with your thoughts on the adjustment that all the schools are having to make?
Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that USEC was able to mention about flexible learning as one that we are actually promoting, knowing the status of the country that we have right now in terms of the internet connection, as well as the wide digital divide that we are currently having. But for the context of the University of Santo Tomas that has been using online technologies for almost 20 years, since 2002, we had the edge of implementing our continuity plan for teaching and learning right away after the declaration of the lockdown, which stated explicitly what the faculty members and administrators would be implementing while we shift to emergency remote teaching. We've initially applied live virtual classes corresponding to their class time periods because the resources were there. But at the time we released the university-wide, it is also at the time that we released the university-wide connectivity and health status trackers so that we are aware of the conditions of our students who were forced to leave their dorms and went home to provinces where internet connection or device access could become a major obstacle. Now, out of the survey, 98% of our faculty and 94% of our students claimed they have intermittent internet connection. So the university, using data-driven decision, quickly shifted to self-paced learning, where students are given essential content to meet minimum competencies, learning activities with longer deadline submission, non-graded formative assessment to check their understanding, and alternative forms of assessment that can be done offline, as well as the non-compulsory attendance to live classes that are now reduced in frequency. So, however, there are issues that are beyond us in terms of digital divide and the strength of internet connectivity. So out of our survey, we were able to locate the students with no internet connection, and with our partnership with major telecom companies, we were able to deliver the devices and the pocket Wi-Fi devices, so they are able to finish the semester. As for our teachers, we continue to provide university-wide support to our virtual mentoring sessions, and having a centralized and dedicated e-learning support unit really made that difference on our end. Aside from having, our own cloud-based learning management system, it made somehow easier and to handle a massive wide e-learning implementation as big as the university. As well as I would want to discuss something about attitude, both the teachers and the students, because with this now that there was that sudden shift from your face-to-face to your fully online course, students may not really ready for being self-directed and become independent in the process without much prodding from the teachers. So I guess for me, COVID-19 also provided some positive, contribution, because it has unleashed a revolution in our education. And with or without pandemic, no single tool really, and no amount of technology would be the solution to all our instructional problems. That's it for now.
Thank you so much, Professor. Is Sir Dean Bakwabo here? Okay, perfect. So let's go back to Sir Dean George Bakwabo of de la Salle Lipa.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. That was my dropping out of the show is a demonstration of one of the problems, the technological problems that the previous speaker was talking about. But I should say that uh, the bigger challenge and the bigger problems are not really technological. Those we know what the solutions are. You know, you need better infrastructure and so on. But I think probably the greatest challenge is more psychological and cultural. It's getting the people who are involved, for example, in our schools, teachers, parents, administrators, to adjust to a revolution that's forced on us by pandemic. So it's really the evolution of people and how they have to change their relationships with each other in order to address the new needs of a new normal. We've been at this for several years. As some of you know, Pam, our school has been experimenting with digital infrastructure and digital delivery of educational content for several years. But even when this pandemic hit and the lockdown changed the whole world, our whole lives, there were many challenges, and they had to do with our relationships with each other, with our students. You know, teachers especially suddenly realized that they're not anymore the center of attention. They're not anymore the sages on the stages. You know, they're now set aside. They're more like guides on the side. They're no longer the star of the show. They are no longer the medium of instruction. And by medium, I literally mean they are the medium, right? They're the medium of the educational content. It goes through the teacher talking to students face to face. But no longer are they the medium. They're now on the side, and the medium becomes the digital infrastructure, our learning management platform, our online courses, and so forth. And that is a tremendous challenge for the institution to adjust to that new reality. That, you know, it's not anymore the teachers, really. I mean, they still are necessary to create the courses and to do the work that's required to educate our students. But it's more their relationship to this platform. This platform becomes their avatar, becomes their representative. And, you know, as Marshall McLuhan said in the 60s, the medium is the message. Now, he didn't mean that the medium is literally the contents. It's what he meant was in that medium changes their relationships with each other, changes them personally, individually, and also collectively. And that's the thing that's the most interest to people. That should be the most interest to people, is what he was saying, is that the medium of the medium is the message, means we need to pay attention to the requirements on us to change. If it's a revolution, we need to evolve in the direction that serves our people the best, our students. At De La Salle Lipa, we are still offering the same basic courses. We've been doing it for the last 3 or 4 years, but even now, we're still changing, we're still evolving, we're still adjusting to the change situation, because in going full online, we really face a big challenge to become different, to become creative and innovative about the way that we conduct our business. We're no longer a residential school. We're more like a mass medium, an interactive mass medium. On the back end, what we have is a production studio, like like a movie studio. On the front end, it's an
Uh-oh. Sir Dean got disconnected. So again, illustrating how tricky technology. Let's go to our fourth speaker for now, and then we go back to Dean. Okay, so our fourth speaker is our only student on the panel, so he will be representing the students of the Philippines. He is an AB Political Science, Master's in Public Management student in the Ateneos Loyola Schools. He's currently serving as Sangguniang President in an interim capacity due to the postponement of student government elections because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please welcome Mr. JB Beharin. Hi, JB.
Hello, Ma'am Pam. Hello, Sir Ruel, and everyone watching to Inquirer and Inquirer.net's Facebook page. It's a great privilege to speak as someone from the youth and as a student to share some insights and perspectives alongside different stakeholders in the education sector in our country, including DepEd, faculty, administration, and staff. So before po the pandemic, I think we need to contextualize ourselves. Where are we as we try to figure out what's the next step for the education sector? We need to situate ourselves in the current context of our country. And we are in the middle of a pandemic. So before the pandemic, students enter academic institutions. So you have universities, colleges, basic education institutions with clear expectations from what they'll go through. So for example, inaasahan natin na decente po yung mga silid-aralan na papasukan natin. Inaasahan natin that our faculty underwent teacher training and that the curriculum is well thought of. Inaasahan natin na pati yung students, handa silang matuto sa mga guro nila. So that's the basic expectations in the education system before the pandemic. But now we're in the middle of COVID-19. And I think the rules of the game have changed. So if we situate ourselves in a simple imaginative term, we're in the middle of crossroads. Sangang daan po yung pinagdadaanan natin ngayon. So in one side, you have pursuing education. On the other side, you have halting education. If we are to halt education, I think the questions we should be asking are, paano yung mga guro natin? Paano yung mga nagtatrabaho sa paaralan? Paano yung mga bata na kailangan at gustong matuto? Lalo na yung students na naghahabol na makagraduate na para makapagtrabaho sa mga pamilya nila. On the other hand, you have pursuing education. But then in pursuing education, that becomes more complicated. I think the questions we should be asking ourselves are, what are expectations from a different style of education from what we're used to? Because the hindrances of COVID-19 to the education sector are clear. We can't continue with on-site classes. So I think, and I hope that this becomes the focus of this discussion. If we are to pursue education, how do we ensure that we offer an education to students, to faculty, and to administrators that overcome the setbacks that made education exclusive in the Philippines in the first place? Hindi naman po siguro lingid sa kaalaman ng lahat na we lacked classrooms before COVID, that everyone didn't have internet before COVID-19, that teacher training was still something that we needed to work on. So I think we're in a parang cramming mode na po tayo kung student term. Parang we're nearing August. For Ateneo, we're already starting intersession enlistment next week. So everyone is all hands on deck. But then, again, in everything that we do, either we're in full throttle mode or either takot po tayo ngayon sa tinatry nating banggain. Siguro, ito lang yung pinaka-basic po sana na makonsider ng lahat. And this is coming from not only as a Sanggu president of LS, but also as a student who interacts with teachers, who had classmates before COVID, who took tests before COVID. From a student, a normal student, parang how do we make education inclusive? How do we continue to ensure that our formators continue to form and our students continue to learn, that the quality of education is not diminished, but then is maintained, but even unlocking potentials that could potentially make it better than what we had before. Later po, I'll be detailing key steps we could probably take. Student consultation, looking at the curriculum and teacher training that we have, communicating the changes in the communities that we're in, and involving them in the decision making, and looking after the stakeholders that will be adversely affected by the shift. Contractual workers, yung mga custodians po, mga janitors ng paaralan, sigurado po ako hindi na po papapasukin itong mga to. So anong gagawin nila in the meantime? And this will not be an easy shift po, no? But then, as the people earlier have mentioned, technology is not the means. Technology is not the end that we're aiming for in this distance learning. It's only the means to the end, and the end is education and continuing the quality of education our students and our faculty deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, JB. Thank for our fifth and final speaker. He is the lead convener of the Kaya Natin Movement for Good Governance and Ethical Leadership, a national volunteer movement that espouses an ethical, effective, and empowering approach to good governance in the Philippines. In 2006, he was chosen by the Asia Society, an international organization based in New York, as one of the young leaders of Asia through its Asia 21 Young Leaders Program. He was awarded one of the 2010 The Outstanding Young Men, or TOYM, of the Philippines in the fields of education and good governance. He was one of the awardees of the DevEx Manila 40 Under 40 International Development Leaders in 2013. Please welcome Mr. Harvey Ke. Good evening, Harvey.
There. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for the invitation to be part of this webinar. I just have a short presentation about what we are doing right now at the Kaya Natin movement. So we're working together with the Office of Vice President Leni Robredo through her Angat Buhay program. We're one of her NGO partners. We were also instrumental the past 3 months in working with OVP in delivering the PPEs and the care packages, food and care packages for frontliners. So naturally, we were very successful with that. We were able to raise 60.8 million pesos worth of PPEs and care packages. So we wanted to continue this bayanihan spirit in terms of trying to help our Department of Education with its distance learning program. I think USEC NEP already mentioned that there are 3 possible options right now for students. First is the modular distance learning, wherein print, digital format, or electronic copies will be given to students. The other one will be the online distance learning, which will be using the internet. And of course, as also mentioned by USEC NEP a while ago, they're also looking at TV and radio as possible mediums of delivering education to our students. I guess no one of us really predicted this pandemic, but I think we are already where we are. So the best that we can do is to really do our own share to make sure that our children and our Filipino youth are still able to study, are still able to get the quality education that they deserve. And we've noticed that the sad reality is there are still many, if not most of the students all over the country do not have the technological devices that would be used should the online distance learning platform be one of the major platforms that will be used by DepEd. So we can move on to the next slide. So what we are trying to do is we are currently doing a Gadget donation drive to help address the needs of public school teachers and students who do not have access to technological devices. So again, similar to what we did in the PPEs and care packages drive, we are trying our best to foster the bayanihan spirit among Filipinos, to ask them to donate their technological gadgets to our students and teachers. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what's needed? No? We are following the DepEd minimum technical specifications that they already released. You can view the whole document in the website that is posted there in your screen right now. What we need are desktops, laptops, smartphones, and tablets. We are asking for people to, I'm sure that you have old laptops, old desktops, or even old tablets that you're no longer using, but this can go a long way to helping our students. As you saw in one video or in one very moving story just this week, you see students going to PisoNet just to be able to enroll, just to be able to do the online enrollment. So you can really see that they do not have the resources to be able to do online distance learning. That's why we are trying our best in the private sector, in the NGO sector, of course, with the help of Vice President Leni Robredo, to make sure that we try our best to reach as many students and help as many students as possible. Next slide, please. So our partners, we are currently reaching out to companies, CSO, NGOs. We'd like to personally thank Inquirer Foundation for being one of the first to say yes to our invitation to partner with us. Thank you so much to Inquirer Foundation for agreeing to encourage all its employees to donate laptops, tablets, and smartphones. So what will happen is the donation drive will benefit, as I mentioned already, public school teachers and students. Next. How to donate? No, if you're interested to donate, very simple. You just send us the following information: your name, your complete address, your email address, your contact numbers, and then what will you donate? No, so for example, you're going to donate this certain laptop, anong brand, what's the model, and then of course, don't forget the charger. Sometimes we just donate the laptop or the phone without the charger. How can you use that, right? So you can, if there are certain issues, please let us know. But I think it's also important to note that we hope that when you donate, make sure that it's already clean. Take away all your personal information, all your documents, all your pictures, all your videos. We don't need to see that. So please make sure that you erase everything when you donate these materials to us. Then once you have this, you can send an email to ovpdistancelearning@gmail.com. It's there on the screen. And then we will, once we get your email, we will immediately get in touch with you on how to get your donation. Next. We're also looking for volunteers. So if you'd like to volunteer and help us with regard to this drive, you can contact Bianca or Winona. Their numbers are there. I'm sure that everyone can chip in and to help and bring more of these technological gadgets to our students. So that's pretty much what we wanted to share. We'd like to invite everyone to take part in our Bayanihan for Distance Learning. Let's all work together for quality education for every Filipino child. Thank you.
Now that we've introduced our panel, let's dive right in and start our discussion. To everyone tuning into this event, please feel free to ask questions as we will be choosing some of them to be answered right here in the second half of this online discussion.
Now we're gonna begin the panel, but yeah, keep the questions coming. It's so good to see so many people joining us. We have people from Pampanga, from Brunei, Parañaque, Isabela, Dubai, Zamboanga, Cebu, Marinduque, Leyte, Ifugao, Pagadian City, Saudi. We see all of you. So if you have questions, if you have comments, if you have any thoughts on this subject, please keep them coming. We're gonna read some of them. We're gonna ask the panelists some of the questions as well. First, we want to ask, because Professor Ramos and Dean, that's really cool, right? He's a dean and his name is Dean. They both mentioned the word revolution. So we really expect this coming semester, this coming school year to be one of change. And this is a question that our executive editor wants to ask. Because before, if you say it's a day in the life of a student was so clear to us. Like we all knew what that was since we all went to school. But with you mentioning that students will be self-learning and classes will be non-compulsory, can you describe to us what a day in the life of a student would look like once we start with the new semester? And what would a week in their life look like? Like one of the questions is there still going to be PE classes? Yeah, so can we hear from our educators? Do you want to start, Professor Ramos?
Now, for the question as to what will be the life of a student, correct?
Yeah. What would a day in their life look like?
Yes. So we're talking about the routine
Yes.
that will happen on the life of the student. But before we do that, we have to go backwards and try to look at the back end of the situation. Because whatever the students will see in the front end, in front of their screen, or something they download offline to be able to study, would be the instructional design of the teacher. And I'm actually looking at some of the questions being asked or comments by those who were able to see us and view us, and they were talking about the problems associated with our internet connection. So just for clarification, that it was already mentioned that we will exercise a lot of flexibility. And online technology or online instruction would just be one of the many things we can do to be able to deliver that content. So if the design of an instruction would be a combination and different formats, so that we were still able to push through with the lesson. So in other words, on the perspective of the teacher, you of the student, you'll be able to see a combination as well of learning activities that would include something that would introduce the concept, activities that would scaffold the lessons, and then, of course, activities that would test their knowledge during and after instruction. And the manner by which the content will be delivered is in combination of something that you can do offline so that you are not, be using all of your bandwidth all the time. And then you are given a lot of, time to be able to deliver. And so there is that leniency and understanding on the part of the teacher, in order to be as inclusive as possible and be as understanding as you can, because we are in this situation. So what we are expecting from the student as well is their own understanding, that while the teacher is now converted into maybe a text, because not all of the time you can be online like this because of the issue of bandwidth. What could be our expectation is that they must realize that while we are doing something like this, we still have your teaching presence. There are like comments saying that it's just it's all just online learning and there's no online teaching. So the students think that when they don't see their teachers in a virtual class like this, they thought that teachers are not teaching. So in fact, the learning activities themselves and the step-by-step procedure being given by the teachers is in fact the teaching presence themselves. So I think there should be that understanding on both parties. And at the end of the day, we are all here for you. And we want to be as understanding and as considerate as we can with the present situation.
Thank you, Professor. Dean? Are you here? There. Hi, Dean. Can you hear us?
Dean George, that is for you.
Yes. Dean, can you hear us? Do you want to proceed with the next question, Rui?
Sure. This one is for JB. Can you talk about what concerns students have about the coming semester, about possibly being fully online, and how is your school addressing these concerns?
So first po siguro, yung pinagdadaanan ng students ngayon, it's really a lot of anxiety, I guess. Anxiety because of the pandemic. So couple that with the hurried shift to distance learning, I think stresses a normal student out. It's not to say that only students are stressed, no. It's also to say that everyone is in a shared stressful situation. So I think the question we could be asking is, how do we make the transition more seamless, and how would we get them involved also in the process? So with the problems faced by Ateneo right now, it's really beating the dates and getting everyone involved to meet these deadlines. Kasi hindi naman po titigil yung pag-ikot ng mundo eh. Patuloy lang po siya. So for example, student consultation po, yun yung naging key para ma-introduce yung concept ng pag-transition ng Ateneo education sa distance learning. So for instance, we already had student consultation sessions from May pa lang po. If you look back sa headlines these past few months, Ateneo Loyola Schools was actually lauded for stopping the semester earlier than expected. So most students were just given a passing grade rather than continuing with the education semester. It's to say po, that was a statement that Ateneo's education then was not really for continuing na po in an online setting because it was designed for on-site classes. Meaning, kaya po tinigil yung semester is because dinesign po yun na harapan po yung estudyante sa guro. So, and Ateneo also needed time to prepare with the dragging shift to education na po this coming July and this coming August. So, yun na po yung hinaharap natin ngayon, yung start of the semester na hindi tayo on-site. The reality naman po kasi ngayon is hindi natin alam kung kailan matatapos yung COVID-19. Kaya, itutuloy ba natin to or isa-stop natin to? At kung itutuloy natin to, kailangan talagang ma-involve yung mga stakeholders na necessary para magpatuloy dito. So, faculty consultation, student consultation, revising the curriculum and making it adaptive to an online or parang distance learning approach. So, hindi na po pwede na parehas lang po yung design ng tinuturo sa mga estudyante nung harap-harapan pa yung teacher tsaka yung estudyante. And especially po, teacher training. So, yun po yung pinagdadaanan ng faculty ngayon, yung adaptive design for learning workshops. So, that's what Ateneo faculty members are going through. Yung question po kanina, yung paano yung PE classes or paano yung iba't ibang classes na nakasanayan na natin ng harap-harapan, yun yung kinocall yung faculty na i-redesign at i-reimagine talaga yung education. At syempre, kung iibahin natin yung education na i-offer sa estudyante while at the same time maintaining the quality of it, kailangan po proper yung communication na binibigay sa lahat ng stakeholders. So, syempre with an impending shift, info overload naman po yung nagiging problema rin ngayon. So, for example, sa DepEd or sa Ateneo, every week po may bagong memo na nilalabas. At online po yung approach ng pagbigay nito. So for example, ang tinatanong po siguro natin dapat ngayon, nakakaabot ba kaya yung mga online memos sa mga walang internet in the first place? So Ateneo, for instance, releases surveys now via SMS. So text 0 if yes or text 1 if no. Siguro yun yung mga klaseng innovations po na kailangan nating isipin in communicating to the students kung ano yung hinaharap din nila bilang mga mag-aaral. Properly communicating po. So parang information design yung kailangan din natin ngayon. Kasi, again, let's situate ourselves in the pandemic po. Gulong-gulo po tayo ngayon sa nangyayari sa paligid natin. Tumataas pa rin yung COVID-19 cases. Tapos kailangan natin isipin na, ayan na yung start of the school year. Pero ako bilang nanay or bilang estudyante, hindi ko alam kung anong susunod ngayon. So parang natataranta na nga ako sa COVID, matataranta pa ako sa start of classes. Kailangan po talaga nating ikonsulta yung mga marunong mag-communicate at marunong mag-information design, so yung mga artists natin, para ma-communicate ng maayos sa mga tao yung mga changes na hinaharap natin. And it all boils down po talaga sa addressing the impact of COVID-19 to the different stakeholders of society, different stakeholders of the education sector. So for Ateneo po siguro, that includes the students, that includes the faculty, that even includes the guards and the contractuals that are facing an impending shift to the education system, no? So we all need to, it's really about collaboration. It's really about transparency and openness. Totoo naman to parang hindi naman nalingid sa kaalaman natin na we're facing COVID-19. So I guess we just need to communicate the truth. That's the first. Communicate the truth that we are facing these challenges in the first place. Second, with communicating the truth, we issue an appeal to people na this is what we need everyone to do. And like what Sir Harvey mentioned kanina, that's where doing our share enters. So I hope it's not too late to get things rolling faster. And I hope na though there will really be problems as we face the opening of classes, sana tulungan po tayo on the way sa start at troubleshooting the problems when it starts.
Thank you, JV. For USEC Malaluan, sir, I don't know if you've been keeping track of the comments, but if you can see, a lot of the reactions really are expressing doubt. They're really worried about this transition. Like, it's everyone. Parang, and you can't blame them because this is something entirely new to the world. How has your assessment? How has the DepEd's assessment of the enrollment turnout been? And do you think is it still possible for this to go higher? And what would you like to tell people who are hesitant to enroll, or parents who are hesitant to enroll their kids? Because we've heard like a lot of parents are deciding just not to enroll their kids for a year just to see what's gonna happen first. What do you want to say?
Well, our enrollment figures for the public sector, that's about 14 million right now that have enrolled as per our record, and that constitutes about 62% of our record of enrollment from last year. But we must take into consideration that there is also a lag in the recording of the enrollment, because we did the enrollment first 2 weeks purely remote. But since the 16th and going on to the 30th, we did what we call the Dropbox system of enrollment, where parents get the learner and enrollment survey form physically and then fill it out. Sometimes they take it home and then put it in the Dropbox, and then these are retrieved. And so this is manually recorded in the enrollment. So there would be probably, give or take, a million more that has yet to be recorded. So probably we'll hit, as of today, about 70% of year ago. And this is already a very good showing of a lot of parents and learners. And you also mentioned that learner who went to a PisoNet to try to enroll, of wanting to continue receiving instruction at this time. And the secretary has also stated that we are giving and respecting the decision of the parents if they would choose not to participate in this school year because of the extraordinary circumstance. It's not just a matter of doubting whether learning can be delivered, but because of the difficult circumstance that each household, in the context of the disruption of COVID, has done to everyone. And so I think your speaker JB has really made a very good description of where we are at the moment. It's a crossroad of one halting education on one hand, or pursuing learning opportunities even in the context of COVID. And your Department of Education has made the choice to continue to provide learning opportunities. We have a learning continuity plan that's available, and you can see it for yourself. It is contained and adopted by way of a department order. All its annexes are there, so you can see it. I think the doubt, what we are seeing now in all the noise in these uncertain times? I would say there are a number. One is at this time, I think there is a tendency for everyone, because of how dear education is to us, to regard everyone except DepEd to be the better judge, and sometimes the better and the ones with the better ideas. The other one that we are hearing is an all or nothing equation, whereby if you cannot deliver it in the ideal form, then better not at all. The other one that we are hearing is demanding readiness today, even if the opening is August 24. And as all of the educators here would know, there is that transition process and a preparation process, and that is where we are now. And our commitment is to Congress, to the executive, to the cabinet, to the president, to the local government units, and to the parents and to the public, that at a certain point we will open ourselves to a demonstration or a dry run, if you might call it, on how this school year will be done. And probably the first week of August will be a very good time for that within our timetable. So, but now we understand the anxiety and the concerns. But it was mentioned that we are in a revolutionary period for education, and do we sit this out? The decision of the Department of Education is not to sit this out. We consider it both as an emergency response as well as an investment for the future of education, because education will not go to the exactly the same way it was before COVID. And I think the things that we are doing now are investments for the future of education. There will be so many things that would not turn out to be ideal along the way, but there are positives that we will are certain we will be able to reap. And even if we have not started it yet, we're already seeing it from the perspective of the Department of Education, the kind of reskilling and upskilling for teachers that will happen, the kind of it's not just a widening of the digital divide. Some of the interventions are mitigating or narrowing the gap. So there are always a two sides of where we are, but we proceed on a perspective of learning continuity. Thanks.
Yusek, the other thing that a lot of parents have been wondering about is there's kind of that struggle because they're wondering if, our kids are not going to be using their classrooms and they're not going to a laboratory or the library. How come tuition isn't going down? And then, of course, like there's the side of the schools to consider. But can you talk about, because DepEd had an order asking private schools to defer tuition and tuition increases, right? Is DepEd looking into issuing a moratorium on tuition hikes for the
you know
year?
this is a very a tenuous balancing that will have to be done. I mean, all sectors are in the red at the moment, and obviously the tuition is the lifeblood of learning institutions. On the other hand, we know the situation that the learners are experiencing at their respective households. Yes, we issued an appeal for a deferment of any tuition fee increase, but coming from the Department of Education and knowing the kinds of resources that will have to be invested to be able to transform a learning system from one that is intended for classroom-based education primarily, and to be able to reconfigure it for distance learning also entails a lot of cost. And I think we are a testament to that, because we even went to the Department of Budget and Management to seek for augmentation of our budget and even the possibility of supplemental budget. So it is costly as well. And I think I think it needs a lot of dialogue and mutual understanding. And on our part, we have set a meeting. We are setting a meeting with the private schools this coming week. At least the officers and officials of the big private school association. So it's a delicate balancing that has to happen. We value our partnership with the private education system and the complementarity of the public and private education. So we've been trying to help out, and I think our advisory puts the balancing within that context. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusek.
Thank you, Yusek. Professor Ramos and Dean Bukoba, let's talk about the teachers in the schools. How are they preparing? Do you feel that they're equipped for the start of this coming semester? Dean?
Can Dean hear us? Or Professor, do you want to start first? Professor Ramos.
Okay. So I've been mentioning something about context and how the decision of one school will be different from another institution. So in the case of the university, to be proactive in post-COVID times, our university is in close coordination with the Inter-Task Force agency in the country, which guides all institutions on how to best deliver instruction based on the context of the learners. As there is this wide variation in terms of student, teacher readiness for remote instruction, as well as digital equity gaps that must be addressed. So referring it to the context of the university, its stakeholders, and its current resources, the university has been gearing up even while the pandemic.
I'm sorry, that was choppy, but I just should make some remarks. You know, God works in mysterious ways. And I, for one, I'm kind of... Hello?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
We can be.
Yeah, I just wanted to get this in because I keep dropping out. But, I want to say that I'm almost glad that this is happening, because I think Philippine education needs to be rebooted. In 2018, we came in dead last in the whole world in reading comprehension. We were second to the last out of 79 countries in science and mathematics. So maybe this is our chance now to remake the whole system. It really, I'm sorry to say, it's nobody's fault. Perhaps it's just one of those things that's happened to us in our history. But our education system needs, a kick somewhere in order for it to really become different. We've all labored very hard in this. I'm sure others like Nepo.
Wait, Dean
Got
dropped
cut off
out again.
Okay.
Do you want to continue
Professor Ramos, would you like to
Okay.
continue?
the story?
Okay, so referring it on the context of the university, of our university, its stakeholders, and as I mentioned, the current resources that we have. So we have been gearing up even while the pandemic by revising our standard training curriculum for blended instruction. So our general education courses are already in blended instruction, while many of our technical courses are into web enhanced courses already. So right now we are moving into the enriched virtual model, mixing more flexibility in terms of offline and online activities that could still be delivered in fully distance mode, and so that our faculty can rapidly teach in this manner. So our rapid e-learning standard training program, which we started this week for about 1,000 tenured faculty members, will last for a month of self-paced instruction and virtual training classes. And these training activities that we provide our teachers are content-rich, pedagogically driven, and technologically assisted by our content, pedagogical, and edtech experts in the university, as well as it is contextually enriched by the program outcomes needed by the industry. And this will eventually allow each of our faculty to prepare the course sites more ready for the fully online environment before August. And added to this, we will dedicate the last few weeks after the training for quality assurance of our courses within the academic colleges, so that we are assured that there is that constructive alignment and that the courses are grounded on sound instructional design principles for online delivery.
Thank you, Professor Ramos. Mr. Ke, can you talk a little bit about how people can support Kaya Natin's efforts to help schools prepare for the coming semester?
Oh, so right now, aside from the gadgets drive that we're doing, we're also working with the Office of Vice President Lenny Robredo in trying to work with local government units in setting up community learning hubs. The reality is, if we want our students to learn at home for distance learning, many of their parents may not be able to teach them and guide them properly. Why is that? No, because some of the parents might be busy. They might have work. They might be frontliners themselves or essential workers. So it's going to be very hard for that. So what we did, what we decided was to work with LGUs to set up community learning hubs that in case the DepEd would, for example, send in printed sheets of papers, modules that will be given to students, then the students can go to these learning hubs, and we would have volunteer tutors who can help them with regard to their learning. Of course, proper physical distancing and a limited amount of students would have to be observed. But these are some of the plans that are currently being discussed right now by Kaya Natin and the Office of the Vice President. As soon as we have the details, we will of course look for volunteer tutors in various places all over the country, especially those that may not have strong internet connection. Even if you have the right devices, but if you do not have a strong internet connection, it would still be very hard for online learning. So with regard to the modular learning that DepEd is proposing, we're also looking at setting up these community learning hubs where students can easily go to just in case their parents will not be able to devote much time to helping them with regard to their education.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, it's true. A lot of parents are expressing that concern. How are they going to juggle working from home, or if they're outside the house, how are they going to do that? Because it seems like online learning, especially for those in the younger levels, would require really a more hands-on approach from parents. Because I mean, I can't expect a third grade student to do self-learning. They're too young for that. I have a question for all our panelists, and this was also brought up by somebody in the comments. And this is something people have been joking about. Online learning, does it equal to cheating? Because parang people like joking na ang dali na mag-cheat because you know the teacher's not in the room with you. Would you like to address that? Any of our panelists can answer.
Let's start with Professor Ramos, then we'll go to USEC. So Professor Ramos, how do you avoid the cheating? How do you address the cheating question regarding online learning?
So I would start by asking the question, what is the type of assessment that you are giving? If you will rely on something if you rely on the questions you give to the students that are being answerable by some objective types and can be taken from the internet anyway, then it really is very prone to cheating. However, there are technology tools that would actually allow students not to be able to open another window while an online test is going on. And that is what is integrated in our online learning management system. However, we'll look at what we call alternative assessment strategies that would allow students to be more reflective, and that if you allow them this time to, let's say, not perform an objective type of an online test, what they could submit probably would be a reflective essay, And another question would pop up again. Can they just copy and paste from the internet and submit it to you? What is good is that the online learning system, for example, in our case, we have a built-in anti-plagiarism tool that would actually allow the teacher to be able to get a report as to how much the students are able to do that cut and paste. Now, in summary, you have to have a combination of these assessment strategies, so that you're able to test students' understanding. You cannot just have one set of assessment to be able to check how much they have learned and how much they have achieved the outcomes of your course.
So you're talking about like three things. For example, you'll have um, asynchronous versus synchronous learning. You will have programs such as Turnitin, which checks those papers. And you're also asking the teachers, I guess, that again, as a reflection of what you said earlier, that the teaching isn't just the lecturing, but they have to check the papers to also make sure that they're not just copying things, right? That's what you're saying essentially.
There's a mix of assessment strategies that must be implemented and embedded in the instructional design.
All right, Yusek Maluluan, how concerned is the
Yeah.
DepEd about
Uh,
the distance learning as becoming, with cheating becoming rampant in the system?
well, it was the uh, Bokobo that mentioned about the greatest challenge uh, being the psychological aspect on adjusting to this new way of for many of delivering instruction. First of all, the alternative delivery modes of the Department of Education is not new. What is new is the scale that it is going to be implemented. And if we're thinking of an assessment in terms of a paper and pencil test, no open books, no nothing, and then within a time period as a way to measure the learning, which is really what we are after, is to measure if they are progressing or learning and acquiring the competencies that we want to teach them, then probably you might say that it is not a reliable mechanism if there is no checking that would happen in the course of the test. But as mentioned by Professor Ramos, there are, in fact, as mentioned by Dean Bocobo, as well, as taking this as a kick in the butt of changing the way we do things, even in assessments. There are many tools and ways by which we can monitor the learning of our students, and there is also the next moving up to check this in the end. So there will be various modalities for testing as well as we shift the learning resources, learning delivery, then the activities also, and how these are submitted will be mechanisms and tools themselves to monitor the learning progress of our students. So I think that cheating is associated with a certain form of testing that we are used to in, let's say, the bar exam or the long tests that we take, and even informative assessments in classroom setting. It's not all that happens, and I think what is more important to take into consideration also is the instructional partnership that has to happen with, let's say, parents or other instructional partners that the teachers might have at the household. And also the motivation, as mentioned also, I think is a big challenge for the learners, how to themselves be committed to a putting a very clear target for learning. Of course, that might sound neat in theory, but we know that it takes a lot of effort in the end on the part of the teacher to manage the class. the students will still be supervised by a teacher, except it will not be done purely on the traditional way where the students are in class. So it has not been our biggest worry. I mean, cheating, distance learning as cheating is has not been in all the management committee meetings with all our regional directors, with all our partners. Uh, I don't think that has taken center stage in our discussions.
Thank you, Yusek. I think that it's funny because people kind of think that the learning is kind of like everybody, all the students on the chat at the same time, like video chat at the same time. The teacher has to check everybody's attendance. I am dying to find out what JB thinks about the worries regarding students cheating in this new paradigm of learning. JB, what do you think about online learning equals cheating?
Siguro there's been repetitive mention po of education revolution. I mean, even as we go into this revolution, cheating has happened even before the revolution took place. so,
Right
so
under the nose.
yes, po, regardless of online or on-site, there are temptations to cheat. So I think the question that's necessary to ask is, why do students cheat in the first place? And to take off from what our different members of the academe have mentioned today, I think it's a lot to do with the design really of the assessment po eh. Saan ba nanggagaling yung desperation ng students na mandaya? Siguro pinamemorize nyo lahat ng bagay kaya mandadaya yung estudyante. So we really need to situate the education that we'll offer in this pandemic to where the students are at. Parang ito po yung education, ito po yung estudyante. Kailangan po nating pagtagpuin eh. Hindi pwedeng may gap na nga tayo, nasa screen na nga lang po tayo nag-uusap. Ang laki pa nung hadlang. So kailangan nating iakma yung assessments, yung mga quizzes, yung mga lectures natin sa kung nasaan yung students to make education relevant also to what the students face in the future. Definitely, COVID-19 will not be the last pandemic we'll face. So tama po yung baka naman instead of making students memorize all of these things, we could make them reflect on how these concepts are relevant to the future that they face. Kasi education po is really about learning eh. And how we want to mold our students in the future. Ano ba yung gusto nating makitang future sa hinaharap? So, ganun natin ihanda yung mga estudyante natin. Hindi kailangan na school bukol sila eh. Kailangan critical thinkers sila, handa sila sa hinaharap nila. So that's how we will stem cheating po. Ibahin natin yung form of assessment, yung pag-iisip natin sa edukasyon. Hindi na pwede yung multiple choice lang, or kailangan we really need to redesign how education and formative assessment works.
Thanks, JB. Harvey, from a societal point of view, how do you think we can approach this particular concern?
I'd like to agree with what JB has already mentioned. I think ultimately, with regard to cheating, may mga estudyante talaga na talagang gagawin nila ang lahat to do it, di ba? So I think what we can do is to just make sure that there are proper checks and balances, di ba? To assess properly the students. No? At the same time, I think it should be clear to them, the students, that what are the consequences for their actions. Halimbawa, instead of exams, we can make them do papers that would easily check for plagiarism. There are now a lot of online tools that can easily check plagiarism. And it's clear to the students that if they plagiarize, they will get expelled. So there are ways by which we can make sure that we minimize cheating, that we minimize these kinds of behaviors. But at the same time, we have to make sure that, kumbaga, kailangan may masampulan, di ba? Kumbaga, we have to really show the students that we mean business. Na pag nahuli kayong nangongopya, pag nahuli kayo nagpa-plagiarize, we will make sure that you really get punished. So if if that happens, I'm sure that many more students will be thinking twice before they do it. So it's really depending on the method that we do to assess the learning of students right now. As mentioned by Yusek a while ago, we're in a different situation right now. It's no longer face to face. It's no longer inside a classroom. So it also is incumbent upon us to be able to adjust the way that we assess our students.
Thank you. And I liked what JB said about memorization. Parang another educator I interviewed said that too. That memorization would be a thing of the past with this setup, and I'm kind of jealous because I hated that in school. And it would be good to raise a generation of critical thinkers. Thank you so much to our speakers. This has been really interesting. We're gonna proceed and start asking you questions from the audience. But before that, we want to thank again our sponsor for making this virtual event possible. Thank you to Unilab. And we also want to give special thanks to our organization partners, Philippine Daily Inquirer, Inquirer.net, and Inquirer 2BU.
All right, moving on to the second half of our inclusive online discussion. We'll be focusing on our attention, the inquiries of our viewers. Let's start off with this one from Salvador Fontanilla. One big concern of private schools is the low turnout of enrollment. So how can they proceed if the financial needs for salary and more are not sufficient to keep the school running? So they would like to ask for your advice. So who would like to take this one?
Ako po from a student perspective po siguro dun sa tanong, ensuring enrollment in the time of a pandemic. Siguro the first question we could ask also, how do we reach the students and their parents during the pandemic? So we really need to innovate po. Kasi parang right now, the popular choice is to go only online in spreading the Google form where you can enroll. But then as we've seen in how DepEd does it in a lot of parts of the country, meron po yung Dropbox method, meron po yung pagpunta talaga ng mga teachers sa mga estudyante nila, tinatawagan nila via text. So I think we really need to be innovative in how we do enrollment in these times. Because as not everyone is in the same level field po with regards to being able to enroll online. So we really need to explore and meet students and parents where they are.
Thank you. We have a question from a parent, Maria Katrina Cruz. Considering the current condition and setup, how do they check for knowledge, especially if we're moving to this kind of setup? So how do parents make sure that the kids are learning? Who would like to answer this? Professor Ramos, would you want to? Or Yusek? I think.
What I can share is what we are preparing right now. Obviously, we are preparing modules, self-learning modules, and this includes a number of activity sheets. These are what we're doing at the central office is to provide the framework, the options, as well as the support learning resources. But at the end of the day, it will be contextualized by the field units. You must take into consideration that while we're dealing here with an enrollment at the present day of 14 million, at the end of the day, they will be divided into classes with a teacher of a class of about 30 to 40 students at the most. We have a survey of the each and every learner, what they have at home, whether they have possibility of support. So there is a lot that will be needed from the teacher to still be able to supervise the learning process, although remotely, and assisted by both technology as well as reconfigured learning resources. And There can be a portfolio. There can be part of the partnership with the parents is to check on the progress of their learners. But the learners themselves, by the way, at a certain point that they're capable of really self-directed learning, is a partner as well in the monitoring of their progress. And this is where the assessment tools will come in, and this must come in various modalities. Uh, uh, i- so I think that's how we are configuring this, because this will be new. Uh, the feedback mechanism and the community of teachers talking together at what the experiences are. We have what we call the learning action cells that has to be there, comparing notes. In other words, it's a work in it will be a work in progress the whole school year that will be happening here, and we talk about the partnerships as well. One of the uh, uh, confidence we're deriving from is the really the partnerships that are working with us on this matter. I think there's a part of it that is revolutionizing rather than the other way around, and so we look to this with a lot of openness, while grounded on the constraints. We're approaching it in such way.
This is from Kim Matik. What are the thoughts of the panelists regarding the printed modules as a primary mode of education? I understand that it's a lot of things, but what about this emphasis on the use of the printed modules? I mean, Yusek Malaluan, what do you think about their effectivity as part of the DepEd's push?
Yes. Well, to us, it's really foundational in the sense that a big part uh, uh, of what is happening is to replace the day-to-day presence of the teacher a as facilitating the learning. And so there's a textbook at the in school, and there is the teacher to guide. And in fact, Professor Ramos walked us through that process. And somehow you need to replace that constancy of interaction between the teacher and the learner. But even then, we do have our own assignments. Even during the face-to-face of the past. And so how can you guide the learner to go through studying at home, uh, and so you have to have a learning resource that would guide the learner, uh, introduce the knowledge, the content, uh, put the scaffolding as mentioned by Professor Ramos, and have some activities to uh, perform those skills, and have some assessment, uh, uh, what you call it, some assessment activities also to test for their knowledge. And we are also preparing a guide to parents, if they become instructional partners in this way. So uh, that's what we are preparing right now. They are in the quality assurance stage, and it will form a key feature of the delivery of instruction for this year. And it also is a necessity for us because uh, uh, there is that portion that do not have the capacity to engage online learning.
Can I add something there in what Yusek mentioned? So, although I'm representing as well the Philippine E-Learning Society, wherein we really advocate on online technology, I'm also a writer of self-learning modules, wherein we refer to printed, textbooks as a major resource in crafting now the self-learning material. So we consider our textbook to be our fail-safe proof materials, all because you can still deliver content with or without technology. So they are becoming very consistent in a way that it could actually allow the learning to push through, even if you have problems along the way with your connection. So that's why we cannot discount the fact that our textbooks are still very much useful, especially now that we have these problems with internet connection. And so if you have the textbook and your teachers have prepared the self-learning modules, you really don't need to read. I mean, for the part of the teacher, you really don't need to write a very long self-learning module. What you can just do is refer to the specific portion of the textbook. And so that saves the time for the teacher because there's already the content expert who already will be able to deliver the instruction for you. So however, we need the teacher to be able to guide what is the sequence of instruction. And so that's why we need to refer it to the specific part of the textbook. Now, on the part of the student, because you have now problems with digital divide as well as the connection in the internet, so we can have the textbook as our source that could in fact allow us to still study even we have our own challenges at home. So in summary, our textbooks will always have a place in instruction, even while we are going into already the revolution of technology with online technologies.
So handouts rule. Okay.
Yes, handouts are very useful as well. Printed ones are very useful.
I wanted to read one of the comments from one of our viewers, Chai Chia. For me as a parent, ikagapang naman talaga ng parents ang education ng mga anak nila eh. This will be extra challenge for the working parents to guide the kids or moderate kids during online classes, especially kids grade 3 and younger. I'm just really sad that the tuition and miscellaneous fees did not change. Can we talk about this a little? And also, how do you think parents, if both parents are working full time, how are they going to be there to teach their children? How do you suggest that they handle this? Because parang it's an impossible juggling act. Lalo na for the younger students. Because like if they're in high school or grade 6, maybe they can do it on their own. Any suggestions for our parents? Maybe you can answer also from the perspective of a student.
Siguro po, especially for the younger students, I think it's definitely a challenge. Even being asked that question right now, parang I can only imagine working parents and what they're thinking na, paano yung anak ko nasa kinder? Paano ko siya ina-navigate through online learning? Siguro 2 steps ko yung naisip ko eh. Parang first, the schools really need to gather the parents for consultation. That's where yung problems of tuition increase and what students and parents feel about it comes about na hindi na-explain na maayos sa mga magulang kung bakit hindi natanggal yung ganong halaga. Sa tingin ko naman po walang gustong manlamang sa panahon na ganito. Kasi like what Yusek has mentioned, we're all in the red eh. Lahat po tayo naghihirap ngayon. So parang siguro kailangan ding paliwanag ng mga paaralan kung ano yung reason sa likod ng tuition fee at ang composition nito ngayon. The second po siguro is for the parents to be consultative and open with their kids, even as young as they are. Alam ko pong mahirap yun isipin na maiintindihan kaya ng anak ko sa kinder na kailangan matulungan niya yung sarili niya dahil magtatrabaho pa yung nanay niya, na magtatrabaho pa ako. Pero kung maging bukas lang din sana yung mga magulang sa mga anak nila, siguro hindi man kaya nung anak niya kaagad, pero at least alam niya na kailangan ko ring magsikap from my end. And I know that's hard to imagine po, no? Yung mga bata nating anak. Pero isipin nyo na lang din na kung mas alam niya yung konteksto na hinaharap niya, mas mag-a-adjust siya. Kasi this is really a fight or flight response po eh. We're all facing uncertainty. So might as well not hide that with our kids and show them the truth that we all need to adjust.
Miss Pam, can I add some more? Um, I think for the part of the tuition fee, why there was not that much change, it could probably be the school invested a certain portion of the previous tuition fee to be able to digitally transform themselves. So that could, in fact, how the funds were rechanneled in order for some improvements could be done before August. So that could be one source of the explanation. Okay, second is because the second part of the question is something to do with supervising our children, wherein the domestic issues are now together with the work from home setup. And probably there should be a way by which the entire family will establish routine with each other, as well as um, managing the entire home, dedicating some space only for working, only for studying, if that is possible. And since I was mentioning something about self-learning modules that I'm creating for the students, we are also creating the tutor guide together with the self-learning module, which the parents should be able to read, and so that they could side-by-side guide the students themselves. So ito yung self-learning module that I will follow as a student. Ito naman si tutor would be the parent, the grandparent, that they will follow as well so that they could guide their children or their grandchildren. So magkatambal po yung self-learning module and the tutor guide that the provider, the educational provider, must be able to, of course, implement come August. So hindi lang po pang estudyante. Si teacher si parents, yung family members, kasama po sila doon sa process.
I think one of the words that's been repeated by our panelists is collaboration, no? So talagang it takes a village to teach the child muna tayo while this is happening. You
From,
said
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Can I share?
Yeah.
Can I share just quickly some of the initial input from our learner survey for this enrollment on what are the challenges that may affect the child's process through distance education? And this has been the response of the households. The top would be the lack of available gadgets, equipment. The second is insufficient load data allowance, unstable mobile internet connection. There's a much smaller number on existing health conditions. There's difficulty in independent learning. I think they're anticipating that. Conflict with other activities, such as house chores. Absence or lack of available space for studying. It can be an issue at the home. Distractions, such as social media, noise from community, neighbors, and then others. So that's just some indication, from the response of the households. Thank you.
thank you, Yusen.
Yeah,
I
I
thought
think, yeah, it's okay. I think
Go
we've
ahead,
been so collaborations has been something that we've been talking about earlier. JB has emphasized on it. From Tata Presi Aguilar, Lego, they're fully online in UAE, and yet the public is comfortable with technology, but it's still very challenging to do distance learning from them, and trial and error is the right description. And Ronald Gosenfia wants to know from DepEd if DICT is working with DepEd to work on the connectivity issues, or if DepEd is working with groups such as ACT to sort of to help with the challenges in the coming school year. So let's start with Yusek Malaluan. So is DICT helping with you?
Yes, the secretary is in touch with the DICT. and they have responded by I don't have all the menu of support that the ICT is giving, but I think that includes some hotspots for some schools that they will expand. They have also written the NTC to continue for the to help us in continuation of the white listing by PLDT, Smart Sun, Token Text, Globe, etc. For our online platforms, the DepEd Commons and other mobile apps. Allocation of free bandwidth to certain public schools. I don't know yet to what extent. Support DepEd in its quest for alternative system of education by way of TV broadcast, and if possible to mandate all broadcast stations, channels, cable TV providers, etc. to allocate broadcast hours and use of equipment or resources to DepEd free of charge, to assign TV channels for DepEd learning to be carried as free-to-air broadcast service by any receiving equipment, etc. So these are all being discussed right now. We have a committee called the Learning Resources and Platforms Committee that is taking the big picture and pooling all of these resources together, including external partners like what Harvey has mentioned.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you. Pam?
I thought this was an interesting question. Hang on. Uh, from Manny Bobat Eusebio, with the proliferation of free and paid online courses, online books, audiobooks, plus YouTube learning videos, how do you think schools will be relevant? If I'm a parent, I can just encourage my child to forgo certificate or diploma and learn by himself, herself, and work for companies not requiring a diploma like Google. What would you like to say to that? Okay, go JP.
I think it's really about the first yung school na pinapasukan and the type of education it offers its students. And second, sa teachers po talaga as main formators. As an Ateneo student po, parang tinatanong ko rin sa sarili ko, parang worth it ba mag-enroll na mataas pa rin yung tuition na babayaran ng magulang ko. Pero parang iniisip ko na lang din na ang Ateneo is more than the technology that it tries to offer. So, yung Ateneo Blue Cloud po na nangyayari, hindi yung cloud yung pinagtutuunan ng pansin, kundi kung ano pa rin yung meaning ng Ateneo education, even online. So, for so long as the values of the university are clear and are being taught still through kahit distance learning man yan, kahit printed modules, kahit online, kahit synchronous or asynchronous, basta may laman at content pa rin na huhubog sa estudyante, that's what makes education the same. Second po talaga is yung guro, yung formator. Siguro in the absence of face-to-face classes, yun po yung kailangan nating isipin kung paano natin ma-offer pa rin yung guro bilang taga-guide or taga-gabay ng estudyante sa paglalakbay niya. Kasi yung school po, ang purpose po ng edukasyon, pag-prepare po talaga ng estudyante para sa hinaharap. And sa Ateneo po, ang tawag na concept dyan is cura personalis or personal care. Ang estudyante po ngayon, hindi lang po estudyante, kundi mga magulang, mga teacher, lahat po tayo ay dumadaan sa isang krisis, sa krisis ng COVID-19. And as we try to make education still relevant, that's the type of education we need to provide, an education of care. So, yun po yung message ko rin po sana sa kaguruan, na patuloy tayong maging tagahubog ng mga estudyante sa panahon na ito. Parang it's really a lot of patience on everyone's end also. Collaboration is someone that needs constant patience. With regards to the difference of what schools will offer to certificate courses, education is more than each course po eh. It's really the tie-up that we offer the students. So, kahit mag-YouTube class ako na 10-minute video, tapos matututunan ko kung paano mag-add ng 3 tsaka 1. Iba po yun sa tinuturuan ako ng teacher ko na ito yung 3 plus 1, tapos ito yung paano ko magagamit yung 4 na makukuha ko sa 3 plus 1 sa future ko as a person. At kung paano ako makakatulong sa bansa ko at sa mundong ko.
Thank you, JB. We have one last question before we go to the final words from our panelists. This question is from Inquirer COO Attorney Rudyard Arbolado, and this is really interesting, I think. For Yusek Malaluan, how can a media company help DepEd in rolling out blended learning?
We will come to you. I think I think we are I think we are at the point where we are still figuring out the and we just had our meeting on the allocation of time and for what grade levels, where uh, uh, not just for the delivery of instruction but also for the communication needs. Right now, actually, I transmitted to that committee quite a number of unsolicited proposals from various media outfits that we are assessing. So I think by next week that will clear up already, and we will be approaching uh, as many help as we can in the rollout. So it it will be for delivery of instruction as well as for communications, and even for teachers themselves as a medium for communication. So uh, by next week, I think this will clear up. As I mentioned, there's a sequence to this. We cannot do it in one. It's quite, I would say, an unreasonable expectation given the transition that is happening. And we have a roadmap, and uh, it was mentioned earlier, the difficult areas like for early grades, like kindergarten to grade 3. But that's one area where television-based instruction could be very effective, for example. Probably more, of course, not a self-learning module for a kindergarten. I mean, but television-based broadcast or radio-based instruction might be more fit. So at the proper time, we will reach out, and that proper time is very near already, because we're at that point where we're already looking at the allocation of the various platforms and technologies that we will be using.
I feel like
That was a very great discussion. Unfortunately, we are now out of time for our inclusive discussion. We'd like to thank all our speakers for their valuable insights. We will close this event with remarks from each of our speakers. So let's start with Yusek Nepo Malaluan of the Department of Education. Yusek, last words,
Well,
please.
I really like the JB's characterization of the crossroad, and the crossroad of sitting it out, wait for when it's safe totally, and be back where we were before, and that has never entered our mind as a real choice. The choice has been very clear from the beginning that we are for learning to continue. In this context, it is we believe it's not incompatible with health and safety to deliver instruction at this stage. It is very challenging, but we must see this as an investment also for the future. And as we look into the routine of that, and as we get to see the routine of that, there will be problems along the way for sure. But we're not inventing something very new here. As mentioned by Dr. Ramos, they've been doing it for quite some time, and it is what has made them able to quickly shift. And it is something that, as I mentioned, will build a more resilient and probably, in fact, boost transformation in the education sector for a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusef Nepo. Always good to see you. Pam?
Next, we have Professor Ana Cheryl Ramos from UST.
Okay. So in this time of pandemic, let's recognize that we're all ordinary humans vulnerable to the virus, and our day-to-day survival is still the topmost priority. But we're coming from educational institutions, so we need to do our job. It is still expected that we still perform our primary function, that is the continuity of teaching and learning. And to ensure that our new reality does not affect the quality of education, our commitment to equity, we can and we should continue to uphold that value of that equity, diversity, and inclusion in our own context. And we must stay relevant, not just because of the crisis, but because we are preparing our students for a technology pervasive world where we are preparing them to succeed.
Thank you, Professor Ramos. Now we have JB. JB Berin.
Hello po. Magandang gabi po ulit sa ating lahat. Right now, in Ateneo po, we're in a few days away from online enlistment for our intersession classes. Kahapon po naglabas po yung student government in cooperation with the administration ng PubMat. Nakalagay po sa PubMat, for all those students who have gadget concerns or needs for Wi-Fi, please contact this email. I'm not sure how many emails they received in the past 24 hours, and I'm even not sure if Ateneo can provide all these needs. I'm sure that's the problem that all educational institutions are facing in our country right now. Kaya ba nating i-shift fully online itong education system na matagal na nating ginagawa? Pero po siguro yung tinatawag tayong gawin is to also think beyond online means, no? Parang as our DepEd USEC has mentioned, as many of our speakers mentioned today, paano ba natin i-innovate yung education? Lalo na hindi nga pantay-pantay yung lipunan natin ngayon. At paano tayo magbabayanihan para maiangat natin yung isa't isa pagkatapos ng COVID-19. Lahat po ng aksyon na gagawin natin ngayon, magulang man tayo or guro, estudyante man tayo or admin, or isa man tayo sa mga mawawalan ng trabaho dahil sa COVID-19, nakasalalay po sa mga individual actions natin ang kinabukasan ng bansa. Kasi paulit-ulit po nating naririnig na ang kabataan ang pag-asa ng bayan. So kung ano po yung mga aksyon natin ngayon, ito po yung magbibigay sa atin ng hinaharap na pinagtrabahuhan natin. So what we do today will define our tomorrow. Thank you po. Magandang gabi.
Thank you, JB. And now we have our last speaker, Mr. Harvey K.
First off, I'd like to thank again Inquirer for hosting this webinar. There's a very wise saying that it takes a village to raise a child. It's very important that every one of us now do our own share to make sure that our children really get quality education. It's now time to think Philippines rather than myself or my own small community. And perhaps that's a challenge for every Filipino right now to chip in, to do their own share to make sure that our young generation of Filipinos will get the right education. Eventually, if you want to think about the future of this country, we have to make sure that the students now will be well educated and with not just with the skills of reading, math, English, or science, but I think the important things of educating them with regards to their character, to the right values. So all of us have a role to play here, not just the people in DepEd, not just the parents, or not just the local government units, but every Filipino for that matter. And if we're able to do our own share by donating our old gadgets, We are also looking for volunteers who can look at these gadgets and fix them if there are problems. We can do our own share in making sure that even in this time of pandemic, our children can still receive the kind of education that they deserve. It's tough. It takes a lot of innovativeness, but it can be done. I think the Filipino people is more resilient than this pandemic. I think the Filipino people will be able to weather this storm as it has been able to do in previous pandemics and previous calamities and disasters. But the only way that we can do this if we work together, if we chip in, if we do our own share. So I hope that right now our mentality is think Philippines rather than just thinking of myself. So that's the appeal, and I hope that all of us would do our own small share to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Thank you so much again to our panelists for being part of INQlusive, the Inquirer webinar series, produced by the Philippine Daily Inquirer, Inquirer 2BU, and Inquirer.net. We want to thank our generous sponsor as well, Unilab.
We'd like to thank our speakers for today as well. To our viewers, thank you for making this discussion successful and fruitful. We promise you there will be more to come. Once again, this is Ruel De Vera.
And Pam Pastor from the Philippine Daily Inquirer.
Thank you for tuning in to INQlusive, the Inquirer webinar series. Stay safe. Good night. Here's a final word from our sponsor.
Happy weekend.